Yep. Yep. So that was our hot section. We're going to go into our not section. Let's try to make this a little bit faster. So
Okay.
give it, don't go into crazy. Well, we'll talk about whatever. I'm going to start on this one. I don't know. I've seen people that seem to like this, so maybe this is controversial. The new EOTech 3-9 super short optic. 3-9 is actually not like, I know that's the classic like hunting scope. You get to 3-9 with a duplex reticle, or the magnification range doesn't bother me as much. I think it's only an MOA, which I guess makes sense for the 3x9 crowd, although I don't know why you wouldn't make a mill option as well. Really, I'm just left with the question of why. Like, I get that it's super short. I don't know that it's particularly light. It's got a built-in mount, which I guess is okay. I'm not super hot on built-in mounts because if something in your mounting surface isn't level, now your scope reticle, like, it gives you no options for leveling your reticle if something were to be just a little bit off. And I guess why, like, a lot of 3x9s are not that long, just making it really short and squat. And I don't know what the target market for this is. Maybe hunters that just want
I
to
have an
all in
opinion.
one. There's never a shortage, and I would love to hear it.
So here's my problem. And again, I love EOTech. I've owned a lot of their optics. They're a fantastic company. I don't want to sound like that. This particular 3-9. Yeah, this particular optic is too fuddy for tack bros and too tack bros for fuds. And and I think they were trying to shoot down the middle between two targets, and they missed both of them. But maybe they'll fix it in future years. Maybe they'll throw it in the trash as a bad idea. I don't know.
Well, but they've had they've had that really short 5-25.
Yeah,
and that makes sense to me because
right.
5-25s can get really, really big.
Yeah.
So you scrunch one down. I've always imagined the eye relief is probably pretty tight on those. Just again, physics. Like, you've got a lot of magnification in a real small package, but like that makes sense to me. Because I can see a use for it, but this thing I don't really get.
Yeah,
we did fail to mention the honorable mention of the new brighter EOTech Voodoo 1-10.
Yeah,
Mike just got a Voodoo.
That's a hot.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah, Mike just got a Voodoo 1-10 off a price table last fall. Not shot or looked through it a ton yet myself, but it checks a lot of the box.
You just zeroed it for me. I mean, that was
I did
at least a good 20 rounds.
I don't think it took me 20 rounds to zero that gun. I think I zeroed 3 of your guns in 20 rounds because I don't have to shoot them very often, so it doesn't really matter whether it's right. No.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. When I've shot it some and looked through it, and I haven't shot it in like matches or out in the woods or that kind of thing. Like zeroing it zeroed well. The turrets really made sense. The reticle I do like. It's got really short turrets, which make a lot of sense. Mike's trying to get trying to get us some sponsorships here. So now they got a brighter reticle in it. I don't always use illumination, but it is nice if you got real bright illumination. That could be really, really helpful. So that's a hot. The 3-9 super short, like, showed that's not a win for me. So Tiger, you go next.
All right, I'm gonna do. I only have two, I have 3 knots. I'm gonna go ahead and run through all 3 of them real quick because we do need to speed up just a smidge, and a couple of them are real fast. First of all is Rev Industries which is a company that I had never heard of before this SHOT Show. I don't know if they're new. I know nothing about them. They released a triple stack speed loader for revolvers. So it's 18 bullets stacked in 3 layers of 6, and you can. So you pull it off, you speed load, you put it back on your belt, you fire those 6 shots, you pull it off, you speed load. And I'm going, okay, if you're Jerry Michalek, maybe this is worth putting shit back on your belt. But 99.3,000% of revolver shooters are not going to use a triple stack speed loader. I don't understand the point. I don't know what it's for. I just saw it and I was like, that's quite possibly the dumbest idea I've ever seen. And I am the king of terrible ideas.
That math may not have sounded right, but he is in fact a math major, so
yeah,
trust that those numbers
math.
Yeah, that maths.
Yeah, that math. Second up is, and this will lead into my third one, is SHOT Show repeats that we see every year but never actually make it into production. They need to quit with that shit. PSA did like Bullpup. CZ had a couple of pistols that have shown up every year. HK had a couple of pistols that have shown up every year. And I'm pretty sure they've only ever produced the prototype models.
Looking at you, Magpul and Zev, and your little flashlight, what was it, the FG, whatever, Zev says, oh, well, it's going to be shipping here soon. And they said that, I think, the last 2, and then Magpul invented that 20 years ago.
I saw shit from 2019 this year, and I'm like, guys, just give it up. And third, from one of my favorite companies ever, the Holosun pistol thermal dot. I want to love this thing so bad. It's one of those situations where the scientists were so busy trying to figure out whether or not they could that they didn't figure out whether or not they should. We talked about it for probably an hour, trying to figure out what the use case for this little 1-inch thermal screen is. I've shot a lot under thermal in the last year, okay? And it's hard. It is fucking hard. And I can't imagine making it harder and putting it on a pistol. I can't fathom. Although really, I guess if it's on a pistol, you're never going to take a shot where drop matters. So maybe it's better. I don't know. I think that's a really cool concept. I think it might be neat as an offset thing if you have a regular giant thermal that has a base magnification of 10 and you're hog hunting and one shows up in your lap. I don't know. But yeah, those are my 3 knots, is the RevTech triple layer speed loader, the Holosun pistol thermal dot, and then SHOT Show allowing companies to show the same shit for 12 years in a row, and never actually producing anything. Continue on.
There you go. Yeah, and I'll tell you, I sat last year on that hog hunt. We sat at the side of the road for 5-10 minutes, thermaling across the field. I mean, it was probably 200 or 300 yards. And these guys, I mean, they take out 200-300 hogs a year, and they were trying to figure out whether it was hogs or bedded down deer. And there was some pricey. There's some pricey thermals in there, and depending on your atmosphere, like is it really humid, yada yada. It's really hard on a 1-inch by 1-inch screen, and that's on a pistol. Like, it's not like it's an offset rifle dot. They're specifying pistol. What?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
agree.
I just don't get it. Like I said, I love Holosun. All the love in the world of Holosun. That's primarily the pistol dots I run. But it's just kind of a swing and a miss.
Yeah, Mike, what do you got for a miss?
Other than the giant Bowie knife you're polishing lovingly.
Sorry. Putting some lube on some carbon tool steel that's satin finished. They sat me down in front of a box of really nice knives to have this conversation, and my ADHD's gone wild. So every time
I didn't sit you anywhere, jackass. You sat there.
I've been pondering knives. fondling knives. So, okay. Yes, I agree with a lot of the ones Tiger threw up there. Really? Why? Come on, y'all. I'm as big of a revolver nerd as you can probably get in this group. I think I probably got the most wheel guns out of anybody. That being said, like, man, it is 2025 at this point, and there's only so much you can do to speed up a revolver reload. And the more your hands are moving or having to
Buy a semi-auto. That's how
the best revolver reload in the world is a second
New York. New York reload. It's buying a semi-auto. If you want your revolver reloads to be faster, shoot an auto-loading pistol.
Right, exactly. And so at the end of the day, like speed loaders like that, like, man, come on. Like a really, really good wheel gun shooter with like moon clips or even speed loaders off the belt is still going to smoke you. So why? So yeah, I agree with Tiger on that. Some of the other things we're getting into the age where there is just an ungodly amount of magazine fed lever guns. I think Ryan had even talked about this a little bit earlier. And it seems like when you have like Henry making them, and it's just like, okay, that makes sense. They're a lever gun only company. And then you end up with some companies that are starting to make them. They're like, wait a minute, you're like
Bond Arms.
Bond Arms. I think Paw has them now. There's just a lot of companies, and you're just like, Sig made their straight receiver. I don't think that was a lever gun. I think that was part of the MCX series. But like,
Yeah,
you're starting to get into this. Like, look, you are not taking this tactical gun and tapping into the rancher, the hunter, whatever market. Like, a prime example is like Ohio. We can deer hunt with straight wall cartridges. I'm doing it with lever guns. I can only have 3 rounds in a gun. What is a magazine-fed rifle giving me over a tube-fed Marlin that I've been using, except for maybe a slightly simpler unload process? But like, I love hunting with my tube-fed lever guns. I don't have a problem unloading it. I don't need a magazine with 3 because guess what? I've been smoking deer with 1 shot. Don't even need the other 2 in the tube. Definitely don't need to do a magazine swap. And last time I checked, most guys running lever guns, even if it's the Henry, like a 223 lever gun or something that can take like an AR-15 magazine, like, you're not shooting 3-gun with a 30-round lever gun. I've not seen anyone running gun.
I did run and gun with a lever gun, 308, but right. I wasn't competitive.
No, me either.
But what we're running into is the normal practice rifleman, a box-fed magazine, Stenag, pick your poison, and run the rifle to the point they need 20 or 30 rounds is not grabbing a lever gun to do it unless they're shooting a match that is like, hey, it's a lever gun challenge. Like, you're not going to go buy a specific manual gun that feeds out of an AR mag just for that. And if you are made of money and you can justify going and buying like a Ruger American or a lever gun or whatever, so you can play the manual in a running gun match like that, that's cool. More power to you. But I think at that point, like, you're starting to game it past the point of the match director's intention of folks to come out there and like, hey, try to keep your 7 or 6 or 5 round gun running. Good luck.
It's a shits and giggle gun.
Right, and that's where you're at. It's shits and giggles build at the end of the day, and I think we're just at the point that it's like, okay, when Ruger made the Ruger American bolt gun, Henry made a lever gun. Like, man, that's probably all the market needed. They probably did not need these other people to step up and do this, because let's be real. Like, if I'm gonna go buy a lever gun, like, I'm gonna go buy a Henry or a Marlin of some sort. That like,
Yep.
okay, now Smith and Wesson is making lever guns too, and like, okay, there's not a whole lot of reviews on them yet. I think it sounds like it's patterned off like similar to maybe some of the Marlins or whatever.
It's a Marlin.
So
It's a Marlin copy.
Yeah, right. Is it a bad gun? Probably not. It seems like Smith and Wesson, especially as they're moving some of their manufacturing to the south, is kind of getting their act together a little bit better. And thank freaking God, Smith and Wesson, I know you're not listening, and that's okay. But you doing this whole removing locks from your revolvers.
That's a hot. That's a hot.
I love you. That is hot. That is smoldering, smoking, vivacious fire. And bringing back the mountain
Poor
guns
Andrea.
and doing all this. Yes, I like it. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. I'll totally admit I am hardcore eyeing 357 mountain gun without the lock.
Did you remember to take your Metamucil today, Mike? We don't want you getting a tummy ache. Your AARP cards in the mail. I don't know how they do with plates, but
I had corn casserole.
4570, I bet wouldn't be real fun to get shot with plates. That's pretty tactical, wouldn't you think? I mean,
yeah.
405 grains of hate.
That's the whole
while
point
we're
behind my
bitching about
458, Ryan.
And while we're bitching about lever guns, let me have this one, boys. While we're bitching about lever guns, come on, guys. How tactical these lever guns have gotten. This is ridiculous. And I mean, okay. Yeah, I've got
Hold on.
a Marlin with.
I have the answer.
With an M.
Oh my goodness. We're going to see that ugly 30-30, aren't we?
Look, I can understand an M-lock rail on a lever gun because the ability to throw a flashlight or a hand stop, a thread because you want a suppressor. Like, okay, that's cool. But now I'm seeing
I've had
guns
the tactical
with
lever action.
AR scope. Okay, but Tiger, I'm okay with that one because you don't have an LPVO and an AR-15 mount flipped backwards to get the objective lens over the hammer.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
come on.
It's tri-rail 4 ends, got a suppressor on it. I plan to put a primary arms like fixed 3X on it at some point.
Yep, and that makes sense. But this whole saturation of tactical lever guns, like, I flirt with it. My 4570 has an M-lock 4-end on it, and that's the way it came. I got it primarily because the barrel was already threaded for a suppressor. But I'm seeing so many of these that the optic mount is completely wrong from an ergonomics and a shootability standpoint. And then they're putting these quivers with tons and tons of extra ammo on. And you're like, last I checked, most of these people that are using like a 4570 for like a bear defense in Alaska, like having 3 quivers of 3 rounds each on an M-lock 4-end is not really doing them any favors. Most guys that have actually carried a gun through the brush, whether in a match like running gun or hunting deer or pheasants, like, come on, the last thing you want is more crap hanging off your gun to catch on honeysuckle and rosaflora or whatever fauna is in your area. And it's more and more about the urban cowboy. So yes, that is one of my gripes about SHOT Show is more tactical lever guns. Come on, you guys.
Which they answered this in the 1899. Savage had it for us. Savage said, "Here you go. You got, well, this is 308, which wasn't around in 1899, but you got 308, you got center fire cartridges with, rimless cartridges. I got a fixed 3-power scope. This is basically your modern, like, etched reticle, red dot type thing. Hey, guess what? I still got iron sights on this bad boy. Flip that sideways. You know what they don't have on new guns? An ammo counter. I can look down on this bad boy and see exactly how many rounds I have left without even opening up the lever. I got my sling.
The
Tactical
Winchester
is
1895 and 7.62 by 54R solved all of our
Or-
leverhead problems.
or you get the 458 Winchester,
Yeah,
as our great president TR used to call it, his big medicine.
that's right.
There's not a lot of problems on this earth that 458 Winchester will not solve. And 5 rounds of rotary magazine. I think it was a rotary magazine. And those 5 rounds of 458, that'll narrow down that'll fix it.
That's right.
So,
Yep, and that is one of my few great regrets as my gun owner experience of guns not purchased was in the pawn shop in West Virginia, pre-64 Winchester, the bolt gun, and 458 Win Mag. It was the Safari version, and sadly, it was missing the rear sight because somebody.
So model 70.
Yeah.
Yes, a Model 70, and they had also removed the hood, which is kind of a shame. The hood off the front sight, and it was a Safari model, which hey, got it might have shown up in their scope or whatever. But come on, it's a Safari gun. Hey, like, come on. Why would you deface it by taking the hood off the front sight and removing the rear? And I should have bought that, but I got on. It was like Numerich and was looking at parts and like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a custom like rear sight made for this. But I still should have saved it out of a pawn shop. This 458 Win Mag, America, straight with cartridge. Sorry,
that'll do
off
it.
topic. Squirrel.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna lump my next 2 together because they're kind of related and they're kind of a broad spectrum. But the first one is all of the new 2011s, and the second one is all of the new 3D printed cans. This SHOT Show, from all the stuff I saw, everyone makes a 2011, everyone makes a 3D printed can. In themselves, there's nothing wrong with that. I like both of those things. Here's my problem. I saw 2011s from around $1,000 to, the sky's the limit with 2011s. This is coming from a Rock Island owner. So I still have a double stack 1911 from Rock Island. 5 years ago, it was a $600 gun. When you try to take something like a 1911 or 2011, which is a more complicated design, and make that for $1,000, or make that as a company that has not made this before, you are, I don't know. I would be very cautious as a new gun buyer to buy some of these like I said, I forget the company it was Gerson or no, it wasn't them.
Yeah.
They make one, but there was
Class has one.
Yeah, but like literally it was $1,000 for a 2011 type gun, and it's a 3011, it's a 3211, it's a they're all kinds of different names, but I would be very cautious buying one of those unless you're a tinkerer. Most of them can probably be got to run, but they're probably going to have a lot of MIM parts. The specs of them are, just who knows. Questionable at best.
So here's
The 3D printed.
I will admit that Turkish guns have been getting better, but at the same time, do you really want to fork over entry 1911, like 2011, like something that you're supposed to have and put a ton of rounds on for a Turkish gun that, like, okay, maybe you'll get it running, but then is it going to really last you 3-4 years of competitive shooting before you have to replace a lot of the main operating parts?
If Springfield Armory, a very established company with overseas manufacturing capabilities, so they've got overseas stuff too. If they can't make one for much less than like $1,500, that new company, like I just question it. So that's one of them. The 3D printed cans is really cool. There's a lot of things you can do with 3D printing that you can't do as easily with traditional manufacturing. Anything's possible, but it's expensive. I have concerns. One, everyone's got a revolutionary baffle design in those things. They're all free flow. They're all revolutionary. How well do they work? If they've been an established company, so one of our friends, Dustin from CB Guns, has one of the Velos. Sounds probably the best sounding free flow can that I've heard.
And
it's a very
Hutch works too.
Yeah, and you know, so some of these companies have been doing it, like they've kind of gotten some R&D. A lot of these companies do not do the amount of R&D that they would lead you to believe. They are not doing tens of thousands of rounds with multiple platforms. You know, it's just not happening. So they may make a really good can that sounds really quiet on their 5 guns or their 2 guns that they tested on. It may not work on other guns. So that's kind of my thing. There's a lot of them. I think it's cool. They're in a lot of nice, I mean, aerospace is really, we were talking about this in a group chat earlier. Aerospace has been one of the big people pushing metal 3D printing. So the DMLS is kind of the modern, like what they call it, metal digital or metal laser sintering, direct metal laser sintering. So because aerospace has put it for a lot of their hard parts and aircraft parts, a lot of the technology is grown with really high heat materials. The Inconels, the Haynes, the titaniums. I'm sure, I don't know if they do Waspaloy, but a lot of those high nickel, high heat things, which work great for suppressors. So you're seeing, whereas like 17.4 in the civilian and the regular like baffle market is a really popular choice because it's easier to machine than Inconel and some of these other nickel products, which are I have personally programmed to machine them. They are really, really difficult to work with. It's really expensive tooling. They heat treat themselves, you know, heat harden themselves really easily. So you get a lot of those benefits with it, but are they all going to be as good as the other ones and you're paying money for them? And depending on the company, they're not repairable, which is maybe a big problem. Some companies have figured out ways to attach them and make things so that, like, if you have a baffle strike, they can keep this part and replace that part. But as what I've seen is a lot of them, it doesn't look like it, and baffle strikes happen. Like even in the best cans, even in the best guns, bad ammo tumbles and takes out a baffle. And if you paid $1,000 for a can plus $200 for a stamp, and then you get a baffle strike, and now it sounds like crap, that's a bummer. So the plus side is they all seem to be making hub compatible cans. So we finally, it looks like industry's finally rallied around one mount, even that can be used with Reardon and Plan B and Plan A and ASR and, you know, whatever other one. So that's the positive. I'll stop there and let Mike go on.
And here's a little dirty secret when it comes to 3D printing technology. When it comes to inspection of 3D printing, so I can take a traditional baffle stack and I can throw that on a CMM or laser scanner, whatever I want, and I can check those individual components and make sure that each component of that stack, before it's welded together, meets and conforms to the tolerances and the print, the design specifications from engineering. When you go to 3D print something, what you run into is, because it is 3D printed and there's not an individual piece that you can go inspect, the only way to inspect those is to do a cut apart. And the more complex of the design, the more areas have to be cut apart to be inspected. Or you could try to do like a CT, kind of like an X-ray, CAT scan. Like you're scanning through the part, and then you're trying to compare that to a model, and that's really messy. And so, from a quality control standpoint, while these flow through cans and the 3D printing technology is really cool. Most people don't understand quality and what goes into making a quality gun part. And the inspection that you can do on every single part is called 100% inspection. The inspection you can do on batches or batch inspection, maybe 1 in 10, 1 in 100. On a traditional suppressor, it is pretty easy to do because I can take that tube, I can take that back. Well, I can take 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 and do a very easy check to make sure that that part is conforming to the design specifications. If I want to do that to a 3D printed part, it is a destructive test normally, because most places do not have the money or the capability to do a non-destructive test to check for uniform and compliance of that part. So that is something to consider. I'm very interested in 3D printed suppressors. I would love to have one. The flow through just from, I'm a relatively young guy, don't want the lead exposure. Most of us in this group that run this show have young children. We don't want to expose our kids to some of the nasty stuff that's in ammunition as they start on their shooting journey. So, you know, a 3D printed flow through can sounds really good. But when you consider some of the inspection criteria, and hey, how many of these flow through cans do you really hear about failing? Not a whole lot. But as the 3D market grows and the printing grows, how many manufacturers are going to do their due diligence with the cut ups, the CT, to make sure that you're getting a can that's not going to fail, that is meeting their product specifications? Maybe some of the bigger companies have the money to, hey, I don't have this capability in-house to pull this kind of inspection off. I can send it to a metrology house outside, get my results back, say this meets my product conformity requirements, and send it on. But some of these smaller shops, I guarantee you, do not have the money, and they're just, hey, we printed it, we shot it, it looked good on modeling, it didn't blow apart when we shot it, it met the reading. But that doesn't mean that every single can is going to be able to pass the quality requirements. So, hey, sorry, quality guy.
Yeah.
But
Well,
so,
and from what I understand,
I'm more
there.
excited and more likely to spend my money on traditional cans, utilizing more low back pressure designs.
Yeah.
So, like
From
the new Turbo K low back pressure is probably a better investment for me than a flow through can. So that's my rant.
Yeah. From what I understand, there's really only a handful, 2, 3, 4. There's a very small handful of companies that are making most of these or 3D printed cans for the industry, because the machines, from I guess back when I was at GE back as a co-op 10 years ago, they had just bought a local business who was one of the leaders in DMLS printing, and the machines for those are so exorbitantly expensive. Like GE's got to buy a company to get a bunch of these. It's not, it's probably faster than it was then, but it's not a really fast process. I mean, there's still physics involved. I'm not sure if the technology's changed. The way when I did it, basically they spread like a ridiculously thin layer of the metal, and then a laser comes in and centers it, and then it just spreads a ridiculously thin new layer, centers that layer together. The next thing you get into with that is the purity of your material. And like at the time I was there, GE was trying to figure out, okay, well, we print this, all this extra material isn't used because they, you know, you've got, like, if it's a 10-inch by 10-inch bed, you've only burned a little bit of it. You've got all this other metal. How do you reuse that? How do you know that it's still pure? You know, that it's still the right amount of nickel and steel and all this thing. My guess is that some cheaper companies probably don't care, and they're just going to take all that material, they're going to throw it back in the machine, they're going to run it again. Maybe it's going to be good quality for a can, maybe it's not, you know. So it's neat
and
technology.
That's actually a really good, I was going to say that's a really good argument because like for a long time, a lot of companies have been buying FN hammer forged barrels, and they'll throw that out their spikes. PSA. There's a lot of companies using FN hammer forged barrels. Well, a hammer forged barrel can vary a lot on the quality scale. And the acceptance criteria for that barrel can vary by the customer. So just because it was produced on one company's equipment does not mean it's going to be the same quality that's going to be accepted by one company versus the other. Just because it came off the same machine over here, this company might say, our acceptance criteria is way tighter. This company might say, send us everything you got because FN in the name is good enough for us. And so the 3D printing world is very much along the same, whether it's metal or plastic. And I think that's what Ryan's really trying to warn you of.
Yep, 100%. I work in manufacturing still. The area I work in, if you want me to make a part and hold something plus or minus a tenth, I can do that all day long. But guess what? If you don't ask me for a tenth and you ask me for 5 thou, I'm not going to give you I'm not going to make you plus or minus a tenth because you're not paying me to make you plus or minus a tenth. You're paying me to make you plus or minus 5 thou, and that's a world different. Like, why would, yeah. So PSA is not getting the plus or minus a tenth barrels from FN. They're getting the plus or minus 10 thou barrels, and then Aero Precision's buying the plus or minus 5 thou barrels, and then, you know, the FN is getting the plus or minus a tenth. These are examples. I don't actually know what the tolerances are, but
Right.
it's just to give an idea.
And another thing on this is that there are not any standards currently for DMLS printed suppressors. There's no tolerance standards. There's no, like, the metrology hasn't caught up to it yet. Like, we're getting there. We're getting there, but there isn't a flow through rate that is, okay, we consider this a traditional high back pressure can and we consider this a low back pressure can. There's the new Turbo K. They say, hey, this is a low back pressure can. Says who? Says the company that's making it in their marketing, right? Yep. Like that's part of it. There's no number, there's no measurement associated with that. Now, for what it's worth, I 100% believe that the new Turbo K low back pressure can has less back pressure than the old Turbo K can did. YHM, I have faith in that. But in addition to all of that, you know, you talk about different specs for different companies and this and that and the other. Some of the smaller shops may not even understand what specs are needed to produce. You know, I come from the physics world, and you look at optics, and like even something as high profile as the Hubble telescope, they ignored grind lines in their glass that allowed them to the striations, because whenever you grind glass, you always get striations. That actually incurred interference with what the telescope was trying to do, and then they had to spend another $100 million to go up and fix it because the company didn't understand the specs, like, and that was NASA. Like, you know, it's not just. So why would a tiny gun company that's all of a sudden they bought a single $10 million DMLS 3D printer or $5 million or whatever it costs, and they're printing these 3D printed cans, they don't know what specs they need, or even if, you know, or if they are sending them off to another shop, they don't know what specs matter and what don't.
Yeah, I guarantee you they're designing it, they're sending it off, and someone's printing it. They're getting it back, they're R&D-ing it. And
yeah, it's in a CAD program, which, you know, I just talked to Justin Brim yesterday, and he makes steel targets, and he just dropped off some steel targets for me. And he had custom designed these hangers. And he said, man, they're a lot beefier in person than they look like on the CAD program. And I was like, yeah, well, you know, on a computer screen, everything shrank. And he said, I always do that on Gen 1s, and then I fix it on Gen 2s. All we're saying here is, with all of this new technology, with all of this cutting edge stuff, it's really exciting. It's possibly going to be the future. Maybe hold off on buying 5 or 6 cans. You know, if you feel like being on the bleeding edge of of suppressor technology, by all means, go buy a 3D printed can, go buy a flow-through can that's been 3D printed. Please report back to us how it works. Do the destructive testing, do the metrology, do all the things that people out there in the world can do, because that's how the industry grows. But also understand that the people who are in charge of the industry may not understand what they're building.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
If this
and
is your
that's a
first, if it's your
legit-
first can, sorry,
Yeah,
Mike, I
go
was just say if it's your first can,
Yeah.
don't buy like the XYZ company's very first can and it's 3D printed and it's free flow and it's the quietest can on their metric. And I mean, there's good, like, we'll throw a thing out there for Pew Science. They do a lot of testing. They're a little controversial at times, but they're at least trying to find a metric to judge a bunch
Yeah.
of cans together. But yeah, just be cautious with your
But
dollar.
if you own 35 cans
Yeah.
and you feel like playing experiments, by all means, buy it. Buy can 36 of this weird off the wall thing, please.
Yeah. Mike,
Yeah, and I'm probably a really good example of that, because I tend to, when I jump in hot and heavy, something poor impulse control, something. But for me, like, I've got some dead air cans, and so like this is a good example of like the Dead Air Sandman series. That's a fairly long legacy. It's not a new design. It's been around a little while. It's a pretty bomb-proof can because it's full auto. I don't think there's any barrel length restrictions. Now, have they aged amazingly well compared to some of the other cans on the market? They're not super hot. There's quieter cans, there's less back pressure cans. But at the same time, other than the fact that the Sandman ones that I have are stuck on chemo, like, in terms of performance, they're still a bomb-proof can. My kid's going to grow up shooting them, and probably, even when I'm gone, the cans are still going to be around doing work. And if Dead Air's still around, they'll service them. Like, there's value in that. Now, granted, Dead Airs can't come out with their Sandman X. So if I buy another Sandman, would I obviously buy that over a Sandman S? Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, that's going back to a company that's shown that they've been able to do some decent stuff in the long run. Spotless
minus
record, no.
disintegrating baffles.
I don't see very many manufacturers. Right, and what I was going to say is I've not seen very many firearms manufacturers or optics manufacturers have a spotless record. There's going to be blemishes on everyone. Trigicon's had issues. Dead Air's had issues. Surefire, you just accept that you got to shoot the can off. When you run into those situations, you realize, like, and I understand this more now.
That's the last resort weapon, Mike. That's the one where you put it in and you just start blowing holes and shit.
Yeah. Now that I'm into manufacturing, I've really decided that anything man-made, designed, and manufactured can fail. I've come to accept it, that like everything's going to have a shortcoming. There's always a compromise made somewhere. In the end, you look for the company that you feel like has the fewest compromises, and when you do run into a failure, their product has the best support. And so for me, is Trijicon perfect? No. Have I sent Trijicon optics back? Yes. Has Trijicon gone above and beyond to take care of me? Yes. And that's really where, at the Action Shooting Show, I feel like probably all of us in this chat would support this. Even Mark Robke, who couldn't be here today, is you got to be careful with your dollars, and you got to balance the quality of the product, the quality of the support. And yeah. So obviously, we're going to encourage you to try to do the best bang for the buck, but make sure that when you do that, you got the support. And so we're going to obviously pick at different manufacturers that are displaying things maybe at SHOT Show, because I know we've gone down the rabbit hole and left SHOT Show pretty far behind. But just because it's the latest whiz bang stuff doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the greatest. I think all of us in this chat, to kind of pivot and change topics, I'm going to step in here. we're all curious with this new cartridge technology that's coming out, taking steel cases, pushing pressures. SIG teased this with this new 6.8 for the military. Geisley and Federal with this new backcountry cartridge. And most of us just see it like, hey, this is exciting technology. We are definitely looking for that push and performance to try to make things happen. But you also have to be a realist and understand where is the technology and how does it apply to you. It's going to be a little while before some of this metallic cartridge technology where they're pushing these higher pressures really bleeds down to the blue collar layman. 6.8 backcountry, or whatever it was, whatever backcountry is. Blame Woodford on that.
7mm backcountry.
Yeah, it's cool. But I also see that as most of the guys that are taking big game at distance, elk, mule deer, most of those guys out west that are doing that are taking a hand load that they have done lots of research and gathering data with to be able to successfully take that deer at 700, 800, 900 yards, 1,000 yards. And they have gone out there. They've sat there with their Garmin. They've hand loaded this round 200 or 300 times to take that one shot on an animal. Now you got a factory cartridge like backcountry coming out, and maybe the Western cartridge that came out last year, and they're encouraging you to do the same thing with a factory cartridge. But let's be real, most of the guys are going to take that Wonder cartridge, are going to throw it over a chronograph, shoot 5 rounds, and then they're going to take that rifle, that Wonder factory cartridge, and they're going to try to do the same thing as that guy that's hand loading, and it's put 100 rounds over a chronograph across an entire year to get the ballistic data to take that animal at 700 to 900,000 yards. If you are taking a factory Wonder cartridge and throwing it after shooting 20 or 40 rounds at an animal, like, get out of here. That's not ethical. You don't belong out there. Go back to shooting deer at 200 yards and in. So I'm going to pick on these new Wonder cartridges, these new case designs. I want to see this high pressure case technology. Geisley teased it in a 223. I want to see that come out in a financially affordable option for your blue collar shooter. That would be really cool. Will I be able to reload it? Maybe not. If it only comes out because you're using a steel instead of a brass, it may be around $500, $600 a case for 1,000 rounds of 223. Maybe I'll switch to this Wonder high pressure 223. But I am a little disappointed in the industry at pushing these Wonder factory cartridges, SIG, Federal, the guys that are chambering the rifles in this, and trying to push it on the hunting market, because I feel like the hunting market, unfortunately, probably has the largest quantity of boomers left in it. And those, I was a hunting guide. I watched people take shots they never should have, and I really am disappointed in the shooting industry for going out and giving shooters this rifle, this ammo. Go take that dream animal at a distance that you never should try. And I'm a little upset at seeing the industry try to support some of this ELR hunting for individuals that have no business doing it. I'll get off my my pulpit.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, here's the thing about Wonder cartridges. Arc interests me. Arc seems nice, 6mm max. You've got 6.5 Grendel. But here's the reality of it. I rarely have an ability to shoot past 500 yards. And more often than not, it's 200 and in. I don't need an arc to shoot 700. Let's say 700. I don't need an arc to shoot 700 yards. A decent 77 grain and knowing your holds and knowing your wind will get you just as many hits. His arc, it doesn't stay supersonic out to 1,000 yards where the 77 grain through the shorter barrels don't. Yeah, but I I've got 2 places that I know of in Ohio within 2 hours that I can do that, and I rarely have time to go there. So it's like a lot of people get ARCs, they get these big Western cartridges, and then it's like '06. All these people in Ohio own an '06. What are you doing with a 30-06? Like, you can't hunt deer with them. Lord knows you don't need, for Ohio whitetail. We got some decent sized whitetail. You don't need an '06 to take down a.
You're calling out your neighbor with the whole 30-06 thing, whether you know it or not. So lay off your neighbor.
Well, I'm sorry, but I don't need an '06 to take down a deer. I can guarantee you. If you use one, that's fine. I'm not saying it's a bad choice. I'm just saying, like, they just get these heavy hitting, like, shoulder pounding guns, which I like to shoot on occasion, but it's like you could have gotten something that you could shoot a lot more of, a lot cheaper, with a lot more fun than going out. I mean, most guys get a '06 and they put bolt gun and they put 10 rounds through it, and they're like, this kind of sucks to shoot. I don't know that I'm gonna take it out often, and then it sits in the safe where they could have got a 243 or a 6. At this point, a 6 Creedmoor would make more sense than a 243. But talking classic cartridges, get a 6 Creedmoor, get a 243, get the 6.5 Creedmoor, and they're not going to beat the crap out of your shoulder. They're still going to take a deer down at the 50 yards that you're shooting at. Most of these people are shooting at 100 yards, and like, I didn't need a 6.8 Western or a whatever it is. Like, it was fine. 243 is still fine, guys. You need to all know that.
My father took an elk with a 243.
Yeah, you can. I think I'd want a little bit more for that shoulder blade, but it'll do it.
He wanted more after that, but he did it. Like,
yeah.
I'll say that SHOT Show is kind of like the epitome of gun owners idolize the idea of capability. And I think that probably the other hosts on this show will get a chuckle, because they know that I love to dream of potential and capability, whether it's a new cartridge or a new scope or a new gun. I fall in love with the idea of, what will this do for me? And then when I get it, okay, maybe I get that marginal improvement, and then I move on to the next thing I fall in love with, because I love the idea of capability. That is a huge section of gun ownership. And so it's very easy to fall in love with the idea of capability. I'm buying this new Wonder cartridge, this new Wonder optic, this new Wonder gun, whatever. Pick whatever Wonder you are in love with yourself, and think that it's going to fix whatever real or imagined problem that you have. Because let's admit, we're all pretty good at justifying our expenditures in our own mind. Now, Ryan might call me out on some of these justifications and say they're not real. I choose to ignore them when it's convenient. But at the end of the day, that's what sells new guns, sells new optics, new products. And so when you go and you are spending your hard-earned dollars, really do an analysis and decide, is this for you? Is it really going to make that improvement that you're hoping for? At the end of the day, I'm really glad that I have hung off buying a 2011, because I could have spent, $4,000 or $5,000 on gun, magazine, holsters. Would it change my position on a podium? Probably not. And then look, Kylo releases a gun that is functional with the magazines that I have.
Probably.
Ability. At least I did.
Probably. We hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's probably going to be the thing that I appreciate. Make sure that when you're spending your dollars, come to your conclusions. Take a moment, step back, give it a little bit of time, and see if your conclusions still resonate later on. And then we'll see how many things Ask members and viewers actually end up buying that has come out and SHOT 2025. I bet it's going to be a pretty small segment of products.
That's a good closing thought for you, Mike. Tiger, what's your closing thought here? Because I know you're trying to get in there.
All right, yeah, I've got. I'm gonna kind of build off what you guys were talking about there a little bit, and then give a closing thought that's actually relevant to the title of the show. Mike talked about justifications for guns. We've talked about a wide variety of hots and knots tonight. One of my biggest knots, one of the biggest things that irritates the ever-living dog shit out of me whenever it comes to justifications for capabilities, this and that, the other thing. Me and Mike argue about this literally all the time. Duty grade weaponry, duty grade optics. I hate the term duty grade with a passion, because 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, 9,999 times out of 10,000. You don't need it. It doesn't mean anything. It's a buzzword. There's my last knot for the night. But beyond that, I'm kind of with Mike. Like I said, I've already ordered one of our hots. I've already ordered the SIG. I'm excited to get it in. I'm excited to see what it's like in person. I hope it's awesome. I'm probably going to pick up the Athlon. And you know what? I'll probably end up, maybe not this year, but maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the road, I will see something that was released SHOT Show 2025 that by then has gone through a couple iterations, has gone through some actual product review, some real consumerism, and turns out to be, the coolest thing since Betty White. So there's kind of where I'm at with it. It's been a fun conversation, though. We don't talk gear a whole lot anymore on these shows, and this was kind of a neat thing.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with absolutely what both those guys said. I would guess most of the shooting public would be better off buying ammo and practicing and shooting than they would be buying new gear. I mean, if you look, most of mine, like
Carbon
there wasn't like a
carbon and lube.
There wasn't like a new gun on my list or something like that. Like for me, it's ancillary, like updating scopes or getting more, optics on things, or better optics, or optics that are a little. That's kind of where my life is at right now as far as stuff. But it is, stack it deep. But it is nice to see that the firearms industry is evolving. Even though there was some guns and stuff we didn't mention here that I saw that did look cool. It did look like people are putting some effort into doing some new things. But to Tiger's point with the duty grade, you'll see tier lists, you'll see all these things. Keep in mind who you are when you're spending your money. If this is going to see war, if you're a police officer, if this is like going to be a gun that you're going to depend your life on, I wouldn't get the most bottom of the barrel gun. But you know what? If you're going to go out 3 times a year, you're not shooting that much. It's just kind of a hobby. Like, it doesn't really matter. You're not competing. It's just you like to go plink some stuff. Like, the cheaper stuff can work for you. I think you're usually better off buying mid-grade or higher. Don't buy a PSI, buy an Arrow or a BCM or something like that. You don't necessarily need the Knights or the LMT or the, that kind of thing. Like, those are nice. They're great. If you can afford that and that's what you want, buy that. But like, you don't have to go.
I'm picking up my LMT.
But you don't have to like dump $3,000 in a rifle that you're going to use twice a year. Like, if that's all you're using, be realistic. Buy a PSA then, I guess. Like, buy an Anderson. Anderson's been making guns a long time. I got Anderson lowers in the safe. Like, they're probably going to work for you. So and that's with the capability. Like, if you're a hunter that goes out for gun season in Ohio, we've got a week and then a weekend. Like, you don't need to go buy a brand new Mark V and a, whatever the newest bolt gun is and some kind of exotic straight wall cartridge, like, to hunt for 8 days out of the year to maybe take a deer at 50 yards. I mean, Ohio hunting's all, most of the country's pretty close. Like, You can do it with a
Makes that free
357.
meat real expensive.
Yeah, I know exactly. Like, buy whatever, but just do your
Quick.
research and be honest with yourself.
Random tech tip. Do not Form 1 SBR and lower until you've built it, tested it with multiple uppers, and know that it's in spec. Sorry, off topic.
There you go.
Important when you're talking
Don't-
about stuff.
And don't Form 1 your Anderson. Let's throw that out there. I mean, I got a Form 1 Arrow, which is almost as bad, but at least it's a Arrow. Like, don't Form 1 your Anderson. That's my
And on that thought, let's
that's
close
the
that out,
PSA
Ryan.
we're gonna end on. Thanks for joining us all. You guys have a wonderful night, and come back for SHOT Show 2026, where we run off the rest of the people who may consider sponsoring
Get
us.
shot in the ass again after dark.